goodness. Thank you all so much for welcoming me. And I mean, I just have to say again, Sarah Nelson is one of the most badass women in America. As a labor leader, as a champion, and she knows better than anyone the power of working people together. And so thank you, Sarah, and thank you all of you for making the effort for being here today. We are at capacity here. 7,500, 7,600 here in this arena right now. Another 1,500 people outside at least. Something very special is happening here today, Montana, and I want to thank you so much. Thank you. My name is Alexandria. Some of you may know me as AOC. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for welcoming me here to Missoula, flying in today. You just saw how beautiful this state is. It is just breathtaking, and it's a state worth fighting for. You all are a people worth fighting for, and we are going to win. We are all here together because we share in the frustration and heartache that comes from watching those in power actively tear down or refuse to fight for everyday working Americans like us. And we are here together because an extreme concentration of power, greed, and corruption is taking over this country like never before. Oligarchy. And we must acknowledge the terrifying moment that we are in right now, and that what we are hearing and seeing with our own eyes is, in fact, happening. We are watching as our neighbors, students, and friends are being fired, targeted, and disappeared. It is real. People we love are being targeted and harassed for being LGBTQ. Our co-workers, U.S. citizens and immigrants alike, are being disappeared off the street by men in vans with no uniform. Educators are being fired for teaching American history accurately, and activists are being detained with no charge or evidence for using their First Amendment rights, especially if they are using those First Amendment rights to speak up for Palestinians and to end the war in Gaza. In fact, the Trump administration admits that it has jailed a young husband and father from New York, Mahmoud Khalil, without any evidence or charge of a crime. The Trump administration admits that they have thrown him in a cell thousands of miles away in Louisiana from his family because he attended a protest, and that they are detaining him for the content of his speech and nothing more. Donald Trump's detention of Mahmoud Khalil for his speech is anti-American, and we demand his release, along with the release of Rumeisa Ozturk, who he is also jailing for writing an op-ed in her school paper. And we also demand the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who's in El Salvador. This is America. We demand our rights, we demand our freedoms, our due process, and we don't just point a finger and lock someone up without their day in court. Never. And we demand this because we do have power in this moment. All of us do. Everyday people do. And Missoula, it will never be just our institutions or officials or politicians alone that uphold our democracy. It will always be the people, the masses, who refuse to comply with authoritarian regimes, who are our last and strongest defense of our country and our freedoms. We know that a better world is possible, and we are willing to do something about it. But to get there, we need to be honest about how we got to where we are right now, because this moment didn't come out of nowhere. It has been a long time coming. The destruction of our rights and democracy is directly tied to the growing and extreme wealth inequality that has been building in America for years. It is not a coincidence that billionaires like Elon Musk dumped billions into this election to support Donald Trump. And he sure as hell isn't doing it out of charity. And we saw it right here, just last election, right here in Montana. The crypto lobby and dark money funneling tons and tons of money trying to buy elections right here in the state of Montana. And time after time, we've seen how our government and laws are more responsive to corporations and lobbyists than to the will of everyday people and voters. And we also know that the agenda of dark money to keep our wages low and to loot our public goods like Social Security and Medicare to give to the rich is deeply unpopular with the people, across party, across background. But just look at what Republicans have been quietly doing in Congress, voting to advance cuts on hundreds of billions of dollars for Medicaid and veterans benefits so that they can take that money and give it to their donors in the form of tax cuts and sweetheart government contracts to companies like SpaceX. And you know who from Montana voted for that, by the way? Both of your senators, Steve Daines and Tim Sheehy. And your House members, Ryan Zinke and Troy Downing. They know that that's not what you want. They know that it is deeply unpopular to chip away at some of the only social safety nets that people have. They know it hurts you, and they know, but they are not there to serve working families in Montana. They are there to serve themselves and the billionaires who pay them. But they know that the only chance that they have to get away with such a deeply unpopular agenda is to try to stoke deep divisions along race, identity, and culture to keep us fighting and distracted. And this has been the big money playbook, not just now, but for decades. And that is why Donald Trump is not an aberration. He is the logical, inevitable conclusion of an American political system dominated by corporate and dark money. And if we are to defeat him, Montana, we must defeat the system that created him. Money in politics is the hand of oligarchy. We are at a crossroads, Montana. We can either have extreme wealth inequality with the toxic division and corruption that it requires to survive, or we can have a fair economy for working people along with the democracy and freedoms that uphold it. Oligarchy or democracy, but we cannot have both. I grew up in a working class family. My mom cleaned houses, and my dad worked on a small business. My parents worked themselves to the bone so that my brother and I could have a shot at the American dream. And for a moment there, it looked like we were going to make it. We had a home. Bills were getting a little less stressful to pay, and I was doing well in public school. And what may have looked like a modest life to others was a dream come true for us. And suddenly, when I was a teenager, my dad was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer. And after a long fight, we lost him. And my dad actually passed away in September of 2008. Just as the economy crashed in the Great Recession and millions of jobs across the country vanished. It felt like the little world of our family was falling apart just as the larger world was falling apart too. And overnight, my mom was left alone to figure out how to provide and put 2 kids through school, keep our house, pay off medical bills, all on a house cleaner salary. And that, Montana, is how I became a waitress to help my family make ends meet. Because it was millions of us. Because it was millions of us, innocent working families, who paid the price in the economic crash while the billionaires and thieves who defrauded our financial system got off richer than ever before. And not a single one of them went to jail. That is the story that Republicans mock, not mine, but all of ours, when they say that a waitress or a working person is unqualified to serve in Congress. But the fact is, Montana, many of us are far more qualified to know what real life is actually like than any of them ever will. I tell this story not because it is special, but because of how common and disturbingly normal it all is. While the details may differ, so many of us know what it feels like for life to be one bad day, one piece of bad news, one major setback from everything falling apart. And I'm here to tell you today, Montana, that we don't have to live like this anymore. We can make a new world, Montana, a better country where we fight for the dignity of all people. And it looks like living wages, Missoula. It looks like stable housing, Montana. It looks like guaranteed health care for all people, America. And it looks like respect for all our differences, no matter who we are or where we come from. Oligarchy or democracy. And we are here today because we choose democracy. We choose freedom. And that means that we choose to out-organize the oligarchy. We must do away with the power of big money. And that is why, even as a waitress with a long shot campaign, I decided right then and there that I would never take money from lobbyists and corporations, and I never will. first got to Congress, I was genuinely shocked by how the place worked. Even having run against dark money in the first place. The everyday influence and corruption was astonishing. You know, even in Congress today, they have somehow conditioned themselves to believe that it's normal for members of Congress who have sworn an oath to the American people to somehow day trade individual stocks and make millions with the sensitive information we are entrusted with for the purpose of governing. I ask you this. How can anyone possibly make an objective vote on health care, energy, or even war when their personal money is tied up in pharmaceutical companies, oil and gas, or defense company stocks? You can't. And we just saw this play out this week with Trump's corrupt and disastrous tariff scheme. See now that this whole tariff shuffle had nothing to do with manufacturing like they claimed, and it had everything to do with manipulating the markets so that they could quietly enrich their friends who bought the dip before reversing it all in the morning. Missoula, what I'm about to say is a matter of fact and not debate. Donald Trump is a criminal. He was found guilty of 34 felony counts of fraud, liable for sexual abuse. Of course he is lying and manipulating the stock market too. And I tell you, Donald Trump, when you want to look for the rapists and criminals in this country, you can start by looking in the mirror. He's there to make himself rich, as well as the billionaires who scratch his back and the members of Congress who trade with him. But he's not there for you or for us or for the working people of Montana, not one bit. And to be clear, I don't even care what party you are, Democrat or Republican. It doesn't matter what position one holds. Members of Congress holding and trading individual stock is wrong. It is corrosive, it is destructive, and it must be banned. Now, earlier this year, I had the privilege of being named to the Energy and Commerce Committee in the House of Representatives. Energy and Commerce Committee is one of the most powerful committees in all of Congress. It governs 2/3 of the American economy. Energy, healthcare, trade, manufacturing, communications, technology, you name it. And for years, lobbyists fought to keep me off of that committee, because they don't like what they don't control. But an interesting thing happened the day that I was named on that committee. All of a sudden, the phones in my office were ringing off the hook, and our email inboxes were so full from hearing from every corporate lobbyist in all of Washington. Suddenly, they all wanted to be my best friend. But you know what, Missoula? Because of your support, because of you all showing up, because you allow me to not take a dime in corporate money, you free me to say no. You free me to fight for Medicare for all. You free me to fight for living wages. And we must free more as well, because not everyone is so lucky. I have seen firsthand how these groups bully and pressure members of Congress. They threaten to take money away or to spend it against them if they don't do what they want. And what they want is for our lives to be as expensive as possible on the lowest possible wage. And it trickles down to how life feels for us as working people. I want us all to understand that this constant pressure that we feel in our day-to-day lives, of the water rising up to our throats, of the impossibility to afford anything easily, of the fear of speaking up or being who we are in public, of the bitter divisions driven more by online algorithms than the truth or the crumbling of our rights and protections, understand that this, right now, is what it feels like to be governed by billionaires. Not someday, not theoretically, not in the future, right now. And the first step is to open our eyes to that. Because of course, it is a system that depends on division to enable inequality, that will favor a president who is the best at dividing us and the most skilled at corruption. Big money is how we got Donald Trump. And his whole presidency began with launching tools for bribery, meme coins and cryptocurrencies to fleece normal people and move money in the dark. Extortion settlements from media companies and law firms who gladly pay the price. Trump himself removed duly elected officials from the chamber of the inauguration, including Republican ones, to make room for who he knows is really in charge, the unelected billionaires who stood behind him. And they all have one central economic mission: to make billionaires richer at the expense of the rest of us. So it does not surprise us that their first economic mission has been to target Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, to fire our federal workers, and abandon our veterans for hundreds of billions of dollars in budget cuts so that they can hand that money off to their donor class. Montana, I know sometimes that it can look impossible out here for the Republicans to be defeated. But that is not true. It is simply not true. And from the waitress who is now speaking to you all today, I can tell you impossible is nothing. Miracles start with mustard seeds, and that is what each and every one of you represent today. Small miracles of faith in ourselves, in each other, and in the refusal to give up. You know, just coming in here today and flying in, we got some very interesting news. Senator Sanders and I got some very interesting news. Here, Montana and Missoula, this is our last stop of the week after crisscrossing the entire country. We had 12,000 people in Idaho. One of the most Republican states in the entire country. We had 20,000 people in Salt Lake City, Utah. We started off with 36,000 people in Los Angeles. But last night, further north in California, in Folsom, which is also represented by Republicans, we had 30,000 people show up. Prior to that, we had visited Colorado, we had visited Nevada, we visited Arizona. And on the way here, we got a very interesting piece of news, which is that some of those Republican House members that we had visited, they just led a letter warning the Republican leadership, saying, we don't know if we can vote for Medicaid cuts now. That's you, Missoula. That's you, Montana. That's you, Colorado. That's you, Arizona. That's you, California. That's you, the people. We got them on their back foot. We got them scared. We got them running. But our job is not done. And we will rally every corner of of the United States of America until we save Medicaid and Medicare for every American, until we defend Social Security, and we tell them who's really in charge in this country. So we are here for the long haul, and we will not stop until they actually vote no. We're not going to let them trick us with gestures and strongly worded letters. I want to see the no vote on the floor. That's the only thing we will accept. But we are here for the long haul, Montana, because we are here for the school boards and the community associations. We're here for the small business groups and the town councils, for public art and gestures of inclusion, and we will build from there. So folks, you know what that means. We will start working now to give your Republican representatives the boot and replace them with a brawling Democrat who will stand up for the working people of Montana. And beyond elections, our task is to build community. Block associations, volunteer groups, advocacy organizations, PTAs, because community is the most powerful building block we have to defeat authoritarianism and root out corruption. This is the path to guaranteeing health care to every American. This is the path to establishing a living wage, to tackle skyrocketing rents and mortgages, to take on the climate crisis and establish a country where the American dream is actually possible for all of us. So I'll end where I began. We might all come from different places, but we share so many of the same experiences. Power to the people. So to all of you who came here today unsure of whether or not this is where you belong, I want to say that you do. No matter if you have all the right words to say, no matter your race, religion, gender identity, or status, no matter even if you disagree with me on some things, but if you are willing to fight for someone you don't know, you are welcome here. If you are willing to fight for working people regardless of who they are, how they identify, or where they come from, you are welcome here. Because here everyone is valued. But we have to stand together. We cannot be tempted to turn in our neighbors or be fooled into thinking that we are really that much different than the trans kid who wants to be accepted at school. Or be duped into believing that we're that much different than the dreamer who seeks to fulfill this country's promise. Hate is a trap that sinks us all. And I know that you know that, Missoula, because you've sent an amazing state representative in Zoe Zephyr to the state capitol. That's my girl out there. I was actually texting with Zoe this week. She was going to be here today, but she's at the Capitol right now voting for you all, doing her job. But Montana, that's because it is standing together without exception to reject division that is the only way that we can win. So I hope that you see that this movement is not about partisan labels or purity tests, but it is about class solidarity. It is about the thousands of you who came out here today to stand together and say our lives deserve dignity and our our work deserves respect, no matter who we are or where we come from, because we are here to make a sacred promise to one another, and we will make that promise to take care of each other on our worst days and to share in the successes of our best. Thank you, Missoula. Thank you, Montana. And with that, I want to introduce the man who has brought us all here together today,